with Canada and Mexico, US President Donald Trump rages in on Congress backing reciprocal tariffs and barriers, promising tax cuts, more oil and interest-free loans for automobiles. India gets signaled out for higher duties on car imports. Let's hear out what Trump had to say, and then we get cracking on what experts make of this.
Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries. On average, the European Union, China, Brazil, India, Mexico, and Canada, have you heard of them? And countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair. India charges us auto tariffs higher than 100%. China's average tariff on our products is twice what we charge them. And South Korea's average tariff is 4 times higher. Think of that, 4 times higher. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them. If they do non-monetary tariffs to keep us out of their market, then we will do non-monetary barriers to keep them out of our market. I have also imposed a 25% tariff on foreign aluminum, copper, lumber, and steel, because if we don't have, as an example, steel and lots of other things, we don't have a military, and frankly, we just won't have a country very long. As the tariffs will go on agricultural product coming into America, and our farmers, starting on April 2nd, it may be a little bit of an adjustment period. We had that before when I made the deal with China, $50 billion of purchases, and I said, just bear with me, and they did. They did. Probably have to bear with me again, and this will be even better. That was great. The problem with it was that Biden didn't enforce it. He didn't enforce it. $50 billion of purchases, and we were doing great, but Biden did not enforce it, and it hurt our farmers. But our farmers are going to have a field day right now.
Right, so that is Donald Trump speaking about America first and reciprocal tariffs, etc. But thereafter, we got comments coming in which said that maybe they were willing to meet other countries midway as well, as the ante on tariffs were upped by the countries themselves. Satyam Pandey, who's the chief US and Canada economist at S&P Global Ratings, now joins us. Satyam, what do you make of this situation? Is it more, for the lack of a better analogy, bark than bite, or could there be bite and then maybe retaliate or retreat? How do you look at this situation right now? And in light of that, what happens to the US macros, and how should one look at countries like India?
Well, thanks for having me first. I would, take his words at face value. That's what we've learned to understand. You may have hopeful views, but he is pretty serious about putting on tariffs, and he's also serious about making deals. So he is a deal maker in chief, and if he thinks he's getting a good deal, he will compromise. And I think some of the reports coming out suggests that they may be looking for some middle ground with Canada and Mexico as well in the coming days. But he wants to start off with at least 25% on Canada and Mexico, and then the reciprocal tariffs after April 2nd. That's his opening stance, for the bargaining.
Satyam, thank you for joining in. Would it be fair to say that over a period of time, even if not now, Trump would have been forced to go back to the negotiation table, because unlike the first term, the countries on which he's imposing tariffs are retaliating equally aggressively, if not more?
Well, I'm not so sure if they are retaliating equally aggressively. I've seen more of a balance of symbolic, sort of retaliation, as well as some substantive. But, the other countries do want to strike a deal with him. It's just right now, it is at a point where we're still trying to understand exactly what is needed to strike that compromise. In terms of Canada and Mexico, he's been very vocal about the drug trafficking and some of the immigrant border control. And with other countries, especially when it comes to autos, he's been pretty serious about it. That comes up again and again. He did talk about the autos in his congressional speech today as well. That was one of the key sectors that he's looking to shore up. The other thing is anything related to national security, whether it's steel, aluminum, or some critical minerals that's needed for the defense, sector, as well as some other key new technology sectors. They are pretty serious about shoring up the industrial complex in the U.S. Whether it's going to happen or not over the next few years, that's yet to be seen. But they want to change that narrative, the industrial complex in the U.S. The other thing is he does want also the tariff revenues. They're looking for revenues, some source of revenue, in order to at least offset some of the budgetary plans that they have coming down the pipeline, like extension of tax cuts, which are going to require some offsetting revenues. So all of this sort of is in play right now, but there's definitely, the window for compromise if the other parties are willing to sort of, put forth their intentions as well. So.
What do these tariffs do to inflation in the US? That's point number one. And secondly, what happens to India?
Well, the tariffs in itself are generally inflationary. That's quite simple. A lot of the extra cost is borne out by the importers. There are some exchange rate adjustments that could sort of help, partially at least. But at the end of the day, between the importers and the final consumer, it gets most of the cost gets spread out. The consumers are quite sensitive with inflation lately. They've had quite a bit of a price level shock in the last 3-4 years. But again, we think that the way that it was structured, the 25% tariff with Canada and Mexico, that's about, and plus, 10% on China, that's about 42% of imports that the U.S. has. We are going to see maybe 60 to 70 basis point rise in the price level. So instead of a 2% inflation target that we were on the path to, you're likely going to see 3% plus, at least in the next 12 months. That's the trajectory that we're headed with these tariffs.
Very, very quickly, Satyam, due to paucity of time, would all of this result in a negative GDP growth for the US in the first quarter based on what the Atlanta Fed survey is indicating?
Well, the first quarter is already running a little bit negative, a lot of front running of the imports and those one-off January weather-related issues. But I think there will be a bounce back on February and March, but it is still going to be a softer GDP growth in the first quarter than what we had previously thought and what we had seen in last year. So maybe closer to 1.5% rather than the 2.5 that we had been seeing.
All right, Satyam, thank you so much for sparing time and joining us today on this issue of tariffs, and looking forward to having you more often on this platform. But where do we stand when it comes to women's leadership and progress in India? The Close the Gender Gap index uncovers key insights, while the Future Female Forward Charter sets the roadmap for real action. Be part of this movement. Tune in on the 10th of March at 5:30 p.m. only on CNBC TV 18. Take a short break. Back on the other side.